They fired me for correcting the CEO's niece's financial report, a $7 million error that would have tanked our biggest client. 3 days later, 76 of our most lucrative accounts followed me out the door. The company lost 38% of its revenue in 2 weeks. But what happened during those 72 hours wasn't luck or coincidence. It was precision, and the CEO's eerie silence afterward. That's when I knew he finally understood who really owned those relationships. My name is Elise Hartley, and at 36, I'd built something most people in this industry only dream about: unshakable client loyalty. 7 years at Bridgewell & Company had taught me that relationships weren't just about contracts and deliverables. They were about trust, anticipation, and the kind of loyalty that transcends company logos. That Tuesday morning started like any other. I'd been up since 5:30 a.m. reviewing the Q3 strategy presentation one last time. Coffee number 3 steamed on my desk as I traced my finger across revenue projections for our top-tier clients. Everything had to be perfect. These weren't just accounts, they were partnerships I'd cultivated from seedlings into redwoods. The conference room filled with familiar faces by 8:45 a.m. Marcus from Zenith Industries, always early, already scrolling through his phone. Sarah from Apex Global, chatting with James from Meridian Tech about their kids' soccer leagues. These people trusted me with budgets that could buy small countries. I'd earned that trust one crisis, one late-night call, one saved campaign at a time. Then she walked in. Talia Wexler, 24 years old, fresh MBA, and more importantly, Donald Wexler's niece. Her official title was Executive Project Director, a position that hadn't existed until 3 weeks ago when she'd materialized in our offices like a bad omen in Prada heels. "Good morning, everyone." Her voice pitched too high, too eager. "I've made some last-minute adjustments to optimize our presentation." My stomach dropped. Last-minute adjustments. In my world, those words were as welcome as a fire alarm during surgery. I opened the revised deck on my laptop, and there it was. Slide 17. The cost analysis breakdown for Zenith's upcoming product launch. The numbers were wrong, not slightly off, not a rounding error catastrophically, embarrassingly, lawsuit invitingly wrong. She'd moved a decimal point, turning a $7 million investment into a $70 million fantasy. The room hushed as I stood. "Talia, we need to address slide 17 before we proceed." Her perfectly contoured face flushed. "I don't think..." "The decimal point," I kept my voice steady, professional. "It's suggesting a $70 million budget allocation for Zenith's digital campaign. The correct figure is $7 million. Marcus's head snapped up from his phone. $70 million for a single quarter. "It's an error," I said quickly, already pulling up my original presentation. "I have the corrected version here." But Talia's face had transformed from pink to crimson. "I don't appreciate being undermined in front of clients." Elise, undermined, as if catching an error that could have destroyed a 3-year relationship was a personal attack. "This isn't about..." I started, but then I saw him. Donald Wexler stood in the doorway, his gray suit impeccable, his expression unreadable. Our CEO rarely attended client presentations anymore, leaving the grunt work to those of us who actually understood it. But here he was, watching his niece's cheeks burn with humiliation. "Perhaps we should take a 5-minute break," he suggested, his voice carrying that particular tone of forced calm that preceded executions. The clients filed out, murmuring among themselves. Sarah caught my eye and mouthed, "Thank you," as she passed. They all knew what had almost happened. Donald approached me as the room emptied. "Elise, a word." Talia hovered behind him, her humiliation morphing into something harder, meaner. "You handled that poorly," he said. I blinked. "I prevented a $7 million miscommunication." "You embarrassed a member of my leadership team." "I protected our client relationships." His smile was winter cold. "Did you..." That's when I knew. It didn't matter that I'd saved the company from a catastrophic error. It didn't matter that I'd spent 7 years building these relationships from nothing. What mattered was that I'd made his niece look incompetent in front of people who mattered. Which, of course, she was. The meeting resumed with my original numbers. The client signed off on everything, but the atmosphere had shifted. Talia sat silent, taking notes with vicious pen strokes. Donald stayed for the entire presentation, something he'd never done before. His presence a dark cloud in the corner of my vision. As the clients left, Marcus lingered. "Elise," he said quietly, "that was a close call. If we'd signed off on those numbers—" "I know." He glanced at the door where Donald and Talia had disappeared. "Watch your back." But I was already watching. What I didn't know was that my back was already against the wall, and the knife was already falling. The rest of the day passed in a blur of normalcy that felt increasingly surreal. Clients called to thank me for catching the error. My team buzzed with the usual Tuesday energy deadlines, coffee runs, the persistent hum of productivity I'd orchestrated for years. But underneath it all, something had shifted. The air tasted different, metallic, like blood before you realize you've bitten your tongue. At 5:43 p.m., the email arrived. Subject urgent. HR meeting required. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. 7 years, and I'd never received an urgent HR email. I knew what this was before I even opened it. "Dear Ms. Hartley, please report to Human Resources immediately regarding a matter of organizational compatibility and team dynamics. Your immediate attention is required. Best regards, Jennifer Walsh, Director of Human Resources." Organizational compatibility, team dynamics, corporate speak for "you're fucked." I saved every file I was working on, backed up my client folders to my personal cloud, technically against policy, but I'd learned long ago that policy was for people who didn't see the knife coming. My assistant, Vera, watched me with knowing eyes as I stood. "Elise," she said softly. "It's fine," I lied. The walk to HR felt both endless and too short. Bridgewell's offices sprawled across the 40th floor, all glass and steel and modern art that cost more than most people's houses. I'd helped design this space, fought for the open floor plan that encouraged collaboration, insisted on the client lounges that made million-dollar deals feel like coffee with friends. Jennifer Walsh sat behind her desk like an executioner who'd rather be anywhere else. Donald Wexler occupied the chair beside her, hands folded, wedding ring catching the late afternoon light. No Talia. Of course not. She wouldn't dirty her hands with this part. "Elise, please sit," Jennifer said. Her voice carried that particular HR tone, professionally sympathetic, legally bulletproof. I sat. Donald spoke first. "We've had some concerns raised about your leadership style." My leadership style? I kept my voice level. The style that's retained every major client for 7 consecutive years. "Your inability to collaborate with new team members," Jennifer read from her notes. "Multiple reports of creating a hostile environment for junior executives." Multiple reports, I almost laughed. From whom? The junior executive who nearly cost us $7 million this morning. Donald's jaw tightened. "This isn't about this morning." "But we all knew it was." Jennifer shuffled papers. "We've decided to terminate your employment, effective immediately. Security will escort you to collect your belongings." The words hit like ice water, even though I'd seen them coming. "On what grounds?" "At-will employment," Jennifer recited. "No cause required. You'll receive 2 weeks severance, continuation of health benefits through the month, and my clients." Donald smiled then, and it was the smile of a man who thought he'd won. "Bridgewell's clients will continue to receive excellent service from our team." Our team, as if Talia knew the difference between a CPM and a CPA. Security arrived Tom, who I'd bought coffee for every Christmas, who looked like he'd rather escort himself off a cliff than walk me out. I returned to my office under his apologetic watch. 7 years condensed into a cardboard box. The client whisperer mug that Marcus had given me as a joke. The jade plant from Sarah, thriving despite the fluorescent lights. Photos from company retreats where I'd built the relationships that built this company. I looked up at the security camera in the corner of my office. the red light blinking steadily. I knew Donald would review this footage later, looking for tears, for breakdown, for victory. Instead, I smiled, picked up my box, looked directly at the camera. 3 days, I said softly. Tom shifted uncomfortably. Ma'am. Nothing, I said, just thinking out loud. The elevator ride down felt like descending from heaven to earth. 40 floors of everything I'd built, left behind. But as the doors opened to the lobby, my phone buzzed. Marcus. What the hell just happened? Joyce from Meridian just texted me that you're leaving. Word traveled fast in our incestuous little industry. I've been let go, I said simply. Effective immediately. That's insane, over this morning. Apparently my leadership style isn't compatible with new team dynamics. He cursed, colorfully and at length. This is Donald protecting his niece. Marcus. No, listen, you saved our asses today. $7 million. Elise, if that had gone through, he paused. Where are you going? Home, to figure out next steps. We need to talk, not today, but soon, very soon. After we hung up, I sat in my car in the parking garage, box in the back seat, engine running. 7 years. I'd given them 7 years. Built relationships worth hundreds of millions. Saved them from countless disasters. And it took 5:43 p.m. on a Tuesday to end it all. But Donald had made a crucial mistake. He thought the relationships belonged to Bridgewell. He thought clients cared about logos and letterhead and corner offices. He was about to learn exactly how wrong he was. 3 days. I had 3 days to show him who really owned this business. I drove home through rush hour traffic, planning a war. Home felt different when you returned to it as an unemployed person. The same apartment, the same view of the city, but now I was on the outside looking in. I poured myself a generous glass of wine and opened my laptop. Not the company laptop, they'd taken that, but my personal one, where the real weapons lived. The USB drive sat in my desk drawer, innocuous as a bullet. I'd been building this insurance policy for 3 years, never thinking I'd need it. Every project retrospective, every client feedback form, every meticulously documented success and failure. More importantly, every informal conversation where clients had asked, hypothetically, what would happen if I ever left Bridgewell? Would you ever go independent, Elise? If you started your own firm, would you let us know? Hypothetically, what would it take to poach you? I'd deflected those questions with professional grace, but I'd remembered every single one. My phone rang. Gavin Klein's name lit up the screen. Former corporate lawyer, current client, and more importantly, someone who understood the delicate dance between legal and lethal. Heard you had an interesting day, he said without preamble. News travels fast. Joyce called me, then Marcus, then about 6 other people. You've got the entire C-suite phone tree lighting up like Christmas. I smiled despite everything, and I'm wondering if you need legal advice. Depends. Are you billing me for this call? He laughed. Consider it a consultation between friends. Meet me for coffee tomorrow, the usual place. The usual place was a small cafe downtown, far from Bridgewell's sphere of influence. 9 a.m. Make it 8. We need to talk before you do anything. Ambitious. After we hung up, I returned to my files. 7 years of relationship building sat in neat digital folders. Contact information, certainly. But more than that, personal details that mattered. Sarah's daughter's acceptance to Princeton, Marcus's wife's battle with cancer, and how we'd adjusted every deadline without him having to ask. The Thanksgiving when I'd personally delivered a campaign presentation to James because his father was dying and he couldn't leave the hospital. These weren't just business relationships, they were human connections. And Donald thought he owned them because they signed contracts with Bridgewell's name on them. I pulled up the non-compete agreement I'd signed years ago, standard language about not soliciting clients for 12 months after termination. But Gavin had already identified the loophole during a casual conversation 6 months ago, when Talia had first appeared and I'd started feeling the ground shift. You can't solicit them, he'd said over martinis. But there's nothing stopping them from finding you, nothing preventing you from announcing your availability, nothing illegal about existing in the same industry. I'd filed that information away, hoping never to need it. Hope was for people who didn't prepare for war. My computer dinged. An encrypted message from Marcus through Signal. Talia just sent out an email taking over all your accounts. Effective immediately. She's already scheduled transition meetings for tomorrow. Transition meetings, 24 hours after my termination, and she was already trying to claim my relationships like a vulture picking at bones. But she'd forgotten something crucial. These clients had my personal cell. They had my personal email, and most importantly, they had 7 years of reasons to trust me over someone who couldn't manage a decimal point. I opened a new document, not a solicitation that would violate the non-compete, just a simple announcement, carefully worded, professionally neutral. Dear Name, I wanted to personally inform you that as of today, I am no longer with Bridgewell & Cotis. It has been an absolute pleasure working with you over these past 7 years, and I'm deeply grateful for the trust you've placed in me. While I take some time to consider my next steps, I wanted to ensure you had my personal contact information should you need anything during this transition. Warmest regards, Elise Hartley. I didn't send it, not yet. First, I needed to talk to Gavin. I needed to understand exactly how far I could push without crossing legal lines. But more than that, I needed to build the infrastructure for what came next. I spent the rest of the night organizing, creating spreadsheets of client contracts, renewal dates, pain points, building a business plan that had been percolating in the back of my mind for years. Bridgewell had taught me everything I needed to know about running an agency. Now I'd use that knowledge to build something better. At 2:30 a.m., I finally closed my laptop. 3 days. I'd given myself 3 days to execute a plan that would either launch my new career or destroy any chance I had in this industry. But as I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, I kept thinking about Donald's smile, that cold certainty that he'd won, that I was just another disposable employee who'd stepped out of line. He had no idea what he'd just started. The USB drive sat on my nightstand, harmless as a sleeping snake. Tomorrow, I'd meet with Gavin. Tomorrow, I'd begin to wake it up. Tonight, I planned. And every plan started with the same beautiful truth: clients don't hire companies. They hire people. Day 1 began with purpose. I woke at 5 a.m. Habit overriding unemployment. The coffee tasted the same, but everything else had changed. No emails to check, no fires to put out, no meetings to prepare for. Just a clean slate and a plan that would either resurrect or ruin me. Gavin was already waiting at the cafe when I arrived at 7:55 a.m., his gray suit immaculate despite the early hour. He'd commandeered a corner booth, 2 coffees already steaming on the table. "You look remarkably calm for someone who just got knifed in the back," he said as I sat down. "Calm is just rage in a better suit." He smiled. "That's the Elise I know. Now, let's talk about your non-compete." He'd brought a printed copy, annotated with yellow highlights and margin notes. Section 4, Subsection C, you cannot directly solicit Bridgewell clients for 12 months, cannot approach them with competing offers, cannot encourage them to terminate their contracts. I know what it says. But here's what it doesn't say. He flipped to the next page. It doesn't prevent you from announcing your departure, doesn't stop you from being available if they reach out, doesn't prohibit you from existing in the same space, and most importantly, he tapped the paper. It says nothing about clients who independently decide to leave. So if they happen to be dissatisfied with their new account manager, that's their business decision. You can't create the dissatisfaction, but if it already exists, he shrugged. Natural market forces. We spent the next hour dissecting every word, every possibility. By the time we finished, I had a clear understanding of the tightrope I was about to walk. Legal, but barely. Ethical. That depended on your perspective. I returned home and crafted my LinkedIn announcement with surgical precision. After 7 incredible years at Bridgewell & Cotis, I've decided to explore new opportunities. I'm deeply grateful for the relationships built and the trust earned during my tenure. While I take time to consider my next chapter, I remain passionate about strategic marketing and client success. Thank you to everyone who made these years so meaningful. Neutral, professional, and absolutely loaded with subtext for anyone who knew how to read between the lines. I posted it at 11 a.m. when I knew the industry would be taking their pre-lunch social media scroll. The response was immediate. My phone started buzzing within minutes. Text messages, LinkedIn notifications, emails to my personal account, but I was waiting for specific names, and they didn't disappoint. Sarah from Apex Global. Just saw your update. Can we talk? Marcus from Zenith. What the hell, call me? James from Meridian, free for coffee this afternoon. I responded to each with careful neutrality. I appreciate you reaching out. I'm taking some time to evaluate options, but I'm always happy to connect with friends. Friends, not clients. The distinction mattered. By 3 p.m., I'd fielded 6 phone calls. Each followed the same pattern shock at my departure, fishing for details, and then the crucial question, so what are your plans? Still figuring that out, I'd say. But I know I want to continue working with people who value genuine partnership. I wasn't soliciting, I was existing. And if they chose to read meaning into that existence, well, that was their prerogative. The most interesting call came from Patricia Huang, CEO of Luxe Cosmetics. We'd worked together for 5 years, built her brand from boutique to national. She didn't bother with small talk. Talia Wexler just sent me an email about taking over our account, she said. She misspelled our company name twice. I said nothing. Legally safer that way. She also seems to think we're a skincare company. We make color cosmetics. Elise, it's literally in our tagline. Still, I stayed silent. Patricia sighed. I'm not asking you to say anything. I know you can't. But if you happen to start something new, something that values attention to detail and actually understanding client businesses, well, I'd be interested in hearing about it, hypothetically. I appreciate your friendship, Patricia. It's meant the world to me these past 5 years. Friendship, she repeated. Right. Well, friends keep in touch, don't they? After we hung up, I opened my spreadsheet and put a star next to Luxe Cosmetics. 1 down. 75 to go. The afternoon brought more of the same. Clients reaching out, professionally concerned, personally furious. Talia had apparently scheduled her transition meetings for tomorrow. Sending calendar invites with the subject line, "Exciting new direction for your account." The feedback was unanimous confusion, irritation, and a growing sense that Bridgewell had just shown them exactly how much they were valued, which was to say, not at all. By evening, I had 17 stars on my spreadsheet, 17 clients who'd made it clear, without my asking, that they were open to alternatives. I poured myself a wine and stood at my window, watching the city lights flicker on. Somewhere in that skyline, Donald Wexler was probably having dinner, confident that he'd solved his Elise problem. Talia was likely celebrating her expanded portfolio, not realizing she'd just inherited a powder keg. My phone buzzed, another message from Marcus. Talia just sent out a blast email about reimagining our partnership with fresh perspectives. She used Comic Sans, Elise, Comic Sans. I actually laughed. Then I opened my laptop and started drafting a business plan. If clients were going to come looking for me, I'd better have something to offer them. Day 1 was complete. The dominoes were wobbling. All I had to do now was wait for gravity to take over. Day 2 arrived with the kind of clarity that comes from burning bridges. I'd slept better than expected, probably because I finally had a direction that wasn't dictated by someone else's incompetence. By 6 a.m., I was touring a shared workspace downtown. Nothing fancy, just a professional address, conference room access, and most importantly, distance from Bridgewell's toxic sphere. The manager, a young woman named Kelly, recognized my name. "Oh, you're the Elise Hartley, from the LinkedIn post yesterday." Fame in our industry was a double-edged sword. The very same. "We'd be honored to have you here. When were you thinking of starting? Today, if possible. Her eyes widened. That's ambitious. Let me see what I can do. By 9 a.m., I had a desk, a printer code, and a view of the city that didn't include Bridgewell's logo. I'd also made 2 strategic calls to freelancers I'd mentored over the years. Dana, a brilliant strategist who'd left Bridgewell 6 months ago after Donald passed her over for promotion. And Antoine, a creative director whose work had won awards while Bridgewell's executives took the credit. "You're building something," Dana said when she arrived. No question in her voice. "Maybe. Interested. I've been waiting for you to break free for years. What's the plan?" The plan was elegant in its simplicity. We weren't starting an agency, not yet. We were simply 3 independent consultants who happened to share workspace and occasionally collaborated on projects. Nothing that violated my non-compete. Nothing actionable. But infrastructure that we could build. By noon, I'd created what I called the Customer Success Score, a proprietary system that analyzed client satisfaction based on response times, project outcomes, and relationship depth. It was everything I'd learned at Bridgewell, distilled into objective metrics. The timing was fortuitous. My phone had been pinging all morning with messages from clients who'd suffered through Talia's transition meetings. She asked if we wanted to pivot to a more millennial-focused strategy. Joyce from Meridian wrote, "We're a B2B software company. Our average customer is 52. Another from Ray at Sterling Industries. She suggested we should be on TikTok. We manufacture industrial drilling equipment. But the message that made me close my office door and take a moment was from Marcus. "Emergency. Talia forgot to submit our contract renewal. It was due yesterday. Legal says we're technically out of contract. Please tell me you have a copy of the terms we negotiated." I did have a copy. Of course I did. I had copies of everything, organized and tagged and searchable. The question was, what should I do with it? I called Gavin. "Hypothetically," I said, "if a former client reached out because their new account manager dropped the ball on a critical deadline, what are my obligations?" "Legally none. You're not employed by Bridgewell. You have no duty to help fix their mistakes. And if that client happened to ask about alternative arrangements, then they're making an independent business decision based on service failures that have nothing to do with you." I texted Marcus back, "I have the documentation you need. Happy to discuss over coffee." We met at 2 p.m. in a restaurant equidistant from both our offices. He looked haggard, tie loosened, the stress of almost losing a $7 million contract written across his face. "She didn't even know the renewal was due," he said without preamble. "Donald's in damage control mode, but legal is legal. We're technically free agents right now." I slid a folder across the table. Every term we negotiated, every addendum, every revision, all here. He flipped through it, shoulders relaxing slightly. "You're saving my ass. Again." That's what partners do. He looked up sharply at the word choice. Partners. Figure of speech, although I let it hang there. Took a sip of coffee. I am exploring some new approaches to client service, more personalized, more responsive. The kind of attention that ensures contracts don't accidentally expire. Elise. I'm not soliciting. Marcus, just having coffee with a friend who happens to be in transition. What you do with your contract situation is entirely your decision. He laughed, but it wasn't amused. "You know what the really stupid part is?" Donald called me yesterday. All smooth reassurance about how Talia would bring fresh energy to our account. Fresh energy doesn't mean shit if she can't read a calendar. Donald's betting on loyalty to the brand. Yeah, well, I'm loyal to results, and to people who don't treat my business like a learning opportunity for nepotism. We talked for another hour, not about contracts or terms or future arrangements, just 2 professionals discussing the industry, the challenges of finding good partners, the importance of attention to detail. If subtext were visible, it would have been neon. Back at my temporary office, Dana had pulled together a competitive analysis of boutique agencies in our market. Antoine was sketching logo concepts on his tablet. We weren't a company, not yet, but we were thinking like one. "How many?" Dana asked when I walked in. "How many what?" How many clients are unhappy enough to jump? I looked at my phone, at the steady stream of messages from contacts who'd discovered Talia's unique management style. More than Donald thinks, less than we need, but it's only day 2. That evening, I sent a follow-up to Patricia from Luxe Cosmetics. Thank you for your kind words yesterday. I'm excited about the future and the possibility of continued collaboration with people who share similar values. Sometimes change creates unexpected opportunities. Her response was immediate. Opportunities? Yes, let's definitely discuss those, soon. 27 stars on my spreadsheet now. 27 clients who'd expressed various levels of dissatisfaction, interest, or outright eagerness to explore alternatives. Tomorrow would be day 3, the crescendo, the moment when possibilities became decisions. I looked around the shared workspace, at Dana and Antoine deep in planning, at the skeleton of something that could be extraordinary. Donald thought he'd cut me loose. He had no idea he'd set me free. Day 3 dawned crisp and electric, the kind of morning where the air itself feels decisive. I'd scheduled 3 video calls, carefully spaced, with clients who'd reached out most urgently. Not solicitation, merely responding to their requests for advice and consultation during their transitions. The first call was at 9 a.m. with Patricia Huang from Luxe Cosmetics. She didn't waste time on pleasantries. I'll cut to the chase. Elise, we're terminating our contract with Bridgewell. The TikTok suggestion was bad enough, but did you know Talia sent our confidential product launch plans to our biggest competitor by mistake? She confused Luxe Cosmetics with Luxe Beauty Supplies. I kept my expression neutral, though inside I winced. That was a lawsuit waiting to happen. I'm sorry to hear about these challenges, I said carefully. Don't be sorry. Be available. We need someone who actually understands our business, our brand positioning, our customer base, someone who's proven they can handle our account without treating it like a college internship. Patricia, you know I have contractual obligations, which prevent you from soliciting us. I've had my lawyers review it, but if we terminate Bridgewell and independently choose to work with a new consultant who happens to be the best in the business, that's our prerogative. The call ended with Patricia promising to send formal termination notice to Bridgewell by end of day. 1 down. The second call at 10:30 a.m. included Marcus from Zenith and 2 of his board members. They were still technically out of contract due to Talia's oversight, which made this conversation particularly interesting. We've been discussing our options, Marcus began. The board has some concerns about Bridgewell's recent changes in account management. One of the board members, an older woman with sharp eyes, cut in. We invest $7 million annually in marketing. We expect excellence, not excuses. What would you recommend, given our situation? I chose my words like a surgeon selecting instruments. In general, businesses thrive with partners who demonstrate consistent attention to detail, deep understanding of their industry, and proactive communication. When evaluating options, I'd prioritize proven track records over promises. And if someone with that track record were available, then you'd be wise to explore that opportunity. The third board member, who'd been silent, finally spoke. Donald Wexler called me personally yesterday, assured me this was a minor hiccup. Mr. Wexler is skilled at managing perceptions, I said neutrally. Marcus snorted. He's skilled at protecting his niece. Different thing entirely. By the end of the call, they decided to explore all options before renewing with anyone. Translation, they were gone. The final call at 12 p.m. was a conference with 9 different clients, organized by Sarah from Apex Global. I'd been suspicious when she'd requested a group call, but her first words clarified everything. We've been talking, she said simply, all of us, about the changes at Bridgewell, about our concerns, about what we need moving forward. I saw familiar faces in the video grid. Joyce from Meridian, Ray from Sterling, leaders from companies I'd nurtured from startup to success. We're not happy, Joyce said. Yesterday's transition meeting was a disaster. Talia couldn't answer basic questions about our 3-year strategy because she hadn't bothered to review it. She referred to my company as some tech thing, added David from Quantum Solutions. We're a leading AI research firm. Sarah took control again. Here's what we want to know. Elise, if hypothetically a group of companies decided they needed more specialized attention than a large agency could provide, what would you recommend? This was the moment, the fulcrum on which everything balanced. I could play it safe, stay neutral, protect myself legally, or I could tell the truth. I'd recommend they find someone who wakes up thinking about their business, someone who celebrates their wins and loses sleep over their challenges, someone who sees them as partners, not line items in a portfolio. I paused, meeting each of their eyes through the screen. I'd recommend they choose expertise over ego, relationships over revenue, and proven results over polished promises. And where might we find someone like that? Ray asked, a small smile playing at his lips. Sometimes, I said carefully, the best solutions emerge from unexpected transitions. Change can be catalyst for something better. The call lasted another 30 minutes. By the end, I had 9 verbal commitments to explore alternative arrangements as soon as legally possible. Combined with Patricia and Marcus's group, that was 19 major accounts ready to jump. Dana knocked on my door as I ended the call. You need to see this. She showed me her laptop, an email blast from Bridgewell, sent to all clients. Exciting leadership announcement: Talia Wexler promoted to Senior Vice President of Client Relations. They'd promoted her. After 3 days of disasters, they'd actually promoted her. It's panic, Antoine said, joining us. They're hemorrhaging clients, and their response is to double down on the nepotism. My phone started buzzing immediately. Clients who'd been on the fence, pushed over the edge by this final insult. The star count on my spreadsheet climbed 35, 42, 51s. By 5 p.m., I had 76 stars, 76 clients ready to follow me into whatever came next. I stood at the window of my temporary office, watching the sun paint the city gold. 3 days. It had taken just 3 days to show Donald Wexler the difference between owning contracts and earning loyalty. Dana appeared beside me. So what now? Do we file the LLC papers? Now, I said. We build something better, something where competence matters more than connections, where clients are partners, not portfolios. And Bridgewell. I thought about Donald's cold smile. Talia's incompetence dressed up as innovation. The 7 years I'd invested in building what they'd destroyed in 72 hours. Bridgewell is about to learn that clients don't leave companies. They leave people who don't value them. My phone rang. Gavin Klein. Heard through the grapevine that Bridgewell's having an emergency board meeting tonight, he said. Something about a mass client exodus. You wouldn't know anything about that, would you? I've been focused on my own future, I said truthfully. What clients choose to do with theirs is their business. Right. Well, keep your phone on. Tomorrow's going to be interesting. As night fell over the city, I sent one final message to my 76 stars. Thank you for your trust and patience during this transition. Exciting announcements coming soon about new opportunities for partnership. The best is yet to come. Then I turned off my laptop, poured a glass of wine, and smiled. 3 days, as promised. The implosion was spectacular, even by industry standards. I woke to 47 messages and a dozen missed calls. Dana had sent a screenshot of an industry newsletter at 5:32 a.m. Breaking: Bridgewell & Co. faces mass client exodus. Over 70 accounts terminate in single day. But it was Antoine's text that made me smile. Check LinkedIn, now. The post from a junior Bridgewell employee was already going viral. Watching your company lose 38% of revenue because leadership prioritized nepotism over competence is educational. To my fellow job seekers, I'll be joining you soon. The ship isn't just sinking. Someone drilled holes in the hull. By the time I reached my temporary office at 8 a.m., the full scope was becoming clear. 76 clients had formally terminated their contracts. The financial press was calling it the Bridgewell bloodbath. Marketing Twitter was having a field day with memes about decimal points and Comic Sans. But the real drama was happening inside Bridgewell's glass walls. Vera, my former assistant, called me at 9:15 a.m. She was whispering. Elise, you should know it's chaos here. Donald's been in crisis meetings since 6 a.m. The board is here. All of them. They're talking about emergency restructuring. Vera, you shouldn't be calling me. I'm giving notice today anyway. Half the senior staff is. We saw what they did to you. We know what's coming for the rest of us. After she hung up, I sat back and processed this. I'd expected client losses to hurt Bridgewell. I hadn't anticipated the internal collapse that would follow. Marcus called next. Did you see the email Donald sent to departing clients? I hadn't. He forwarded it. Dear valued partner, we're disappointed by your decision to terminate our partnership. We remind you that any proprietary strategies, campaigns, or materials developed during our engagement remain the intellectual property of Bridgewell & Company. Any attempt to replicate these materials with other providers may result in legal action. Furthermore, we have reason to believe that former employees may be inappropriately influencing your decisions. We are investigating all violations of non-compete agreements and will pursue all available remedies. Donald Wexler, CEO, Bridgewell & Co. Threats. He was actually threatening clients who were leaving. It was desperation dressed up as authority, and it was exactly the wrong move. Patricia Huang called immediately after. Did this asshole just threaten to sue me for leaving me after his niece sent our launch plans to our competitor? The calls kept coming. Clients who'd been wavering, pushed into decision by Donald's ham-fisted intimidation. My 76 stars became 81, then 85. By noon, it was 92. Then came the call I'd been expecting. Ms. Hartley, Donald's voice was controlled, but I could hear the fault lines. I believe we should talk. I don't believe we have anything to discuss, Mr. Wexler. You've orchestrated this, deliberately sabotaged. I've done nothing but exist, Donald. If your clients choose to work with people who value them, that's market dynamics. We'll sue, violation of non-compete, tortious interference, corporate espionage. Try it. Gavin had prepared me for this. Sue me for responding when clients reached out. Sue me for having relationships you couldn't monetize. See how that plays in court or in the press. Silence. Then what do you want? And there it was. The moment when power shifted hands so completely that he was asking me for terms. I don't want anything from you, Donald. I already have everything I need. Integrity, expertise, and the trust of people who matter. The board is breathing down my neck. Talia is... He stopped himself. Talia is what overwhelmed, underqualified, exposed as the nepotism hire she always was. She's my family. And they were my clients. You made your choice. More silence. I could practically hear him calculating, trying to find leverage he didn't have. If you'd consider a consulting arrangement, he said finally, help stabilize the remaining accounts, transition them properly, we could make it worth your while. I actually laughed. You fired me for doing my job too well. Now you want to hire me back to clean up your mess. Name your price. My price. I looked around my bustling temporary office, at Dana fielding calls from potential clients, at Antoine designing our brand identity, at the future we were building from Bridgewell's ashes. My price is watching you explain to your board how nepotism cost them 38% of revenue. My price is building something better while you salvage what's left. This isn't over, Elise. You're right. It's just beginning. I hung up and turned to find my team watching. Word had spread about the client count 92 and climbing. The financial damage to Bridgewell was catastrophic, but more than that, their reputation was in ruins. Who would trust an agency that promoted incompetence and threatened departing clients? By end of day, 3 more Bridgewell employees had reached out about opportunities. Good people I'd worked with for years. Rats fleeing the sinking ship. The brain drain would be almost as damaging as the client losses. An email from Jennifer in HR arrived at 6:43 p.m. Elise, we need to discuss your severance package. There seem to be some irregularities. I forwarded it to Gavin without comment. Let them try to claw back 2 weeks of severance while their company burned. It would be like rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic. That evening, Marketing Week published a brutal analysis. The Bridgewell Collapse, a case study in how nepotism and hubris can destroy 7 years of growth in 72 hours. Talia Wexler's promotion to SVP was mentioned in paragraph 3. Her resignation to pursue other opportunities was mentioned in paragraph 12. She'd lasted less than 8 hours in her new role. I poured champagne for my small team. We toasted to new beginnings, to lessons learned. To the 96 clients, the count was still rising who'd chosen relationships over corporations. So what's next? Dana asked. Now we build properly, ethically, successfully. And Bridgewell. I thought about Donald, probably still in his office, still in meetings, still trying to understand how his perfect plan had exploded so completely. Bridgewell will survive. Smaller, weaker, but they'll survive. They'll bring in new leadership, make promises about cultural change, slowly rebuild. It'll take years to recover what they lost in 3 days. All because they fired the wrong person. No, I corrected. All because they never understood that business is personal. Every contract, every campaign, every success, it's all built on trust. And trust, once broken, doesn't care about org charts or bloodlines. My phone buzzed. Client number 97. The empire Donald Wexler thought he owned had been built on relationships I'd cultivated, and in the end, those relationships chose their architect over the landlord. 3 days, 72 hours, 97 clients. The math was simple, the message was clear. Never underestimate the person who holds the keys to your kingdom. 6 weeks later, the rain fell soft against the windows of Cafe Meridian, the same place where Marcus and I had planned the beginning of Bridgewell's end. But this morning was different. This morning, I was signing my future into existence. The incorporation papers for Hartley Strategies lay before me, heavy with possibility. Dana and Antoine flanked me at the table, our small team that had grown to 12 in just over a month. We'd already secured office space, real offices, not shared desks, and the client roster read like a who's who of industry leaders. Before you sign, Antoine said, you should see this. He showed me his phone. A LinkedIn update from Donald Wexler. After 15 years of leadership, I've decided to step down as CEO of Bridgewell & Conde to pursue new opportunities, proud of what we built, and excited for the agency's future under new leadership. Translation: the board had finally forced him out. There's more, Dana added. Look at the comments. Dozens of former Bridgewell employees and clients, sharing their real experiences. The decimal point disaster, the Comic Sans email, the threats to departing clients. Donald's carefully crafted exit statement was being buried under an avalanche of truth. I signed the papers with my mother's pen, the one she'd given me when I graduated business school. For when you sign something important, she'd said. She was right, this was important, but not just for me. My phone buzzed. A text from her. Scan came back clear, 6 months cancer-free, celebrating with champagne tonight. Proud of you, darling. For the first time in weeks, I felt tears threaten. The success was sweet, but knowing she was here to see it, that was everything. Patricia Huang arrived for our 11 a.m. meeting, shaking rain from her umbrella. Did you see the news about Bridgewell's latest earnings report? I had down 47% year over year. They'd stabilized the bleeding, but at a devastating cost. Middle management gutted. Senior talent fled. Reputation in tatters. The new CEO was competent, but faced an uphill battle that would take years to climb. Let's not dwell on the past, I said. We have your spring campaign to plan. But Patricia smiled. Just remembering that transition meeting with Talia, she asked if we'd considered pivoting to a younger demographic. Our core customer is professional women over 40. You know what you told me 5 years ago? Never apologize for knowing exactly who you are. Still good advice. The best, which is why I'm here. The meeting was productive, creative. Everything Bridgewell meetings had stopped being when bureaucracy replaced purpose. As Patricia left, She paused at the door. You know what the difference is? You never saw us as accounts to manage. You saw us as businesses to grow. That's why we followed you. Elise, all 96 of us. 96, the final count. It could have been more. Inquiries were still coming in. But I'd made a decision. Quality over quantity, relationships over revenue. Everything Bridgewell had forgotten. The afternoon brought a surprise visitor. Talia Wexler stood in our reception area, looking younger than her 24 years. Designer suit replaced with jeans and humility. I know I'm probably the last person you want to see, she began. I could have sent her away, could have savored this moment of reversed fortunes. Instead, I gestured to my office. I wanted to apologize, she said, sitting nervously. I was in over my head. Uncle Donald promised I'd learn on the job, that the team would support me. I didn't realize that you were replacing people who'd earned their positions. She flinched. Yes, and I'm sorry about the decimal point, about Comic Sans, about sending confidential files to the wrong people, about all of it. Why are you here, Talia? Because I actually do want to learn, not from my uncle or his connections, but from someone who built something real. I'm not asking for a job. I know that bridge is burned, but maybe advice, mentorship. I'll pay for your time. I studied her. She seemed genuine, but then again, I'd underestimated her family before. One coffee, I said finally. We'll see if you're serious about learning or just looking for another shortcut. After she left, I stood at my window, watching the city blur through rain. 7 years ago, I'd stood at a similar window in Bridgewell's tower, dreaming of what I could build with the right support. Now I was building it without them, or rather, in spite of them. My reflection caught my eye. The woman staring back wasn't the same one who'd cleaned out her desk with trembling hands. This one stood straighter, smiled sharper, knew her worth in more than numbers on a balance sheet. Donald Wexler had thought he was removing a problem employee. Instead, he'd created a competitor who understood his business better than he did, who knew every client's birthday, every pain point, every unrealized ambition, who'd spent 7 years taking notes he never knew existed. The rain stopped, and sun broke through the clouds, painting the wet streets gold. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new chances to prove that success wasn't about who you knew but what you delivered. But tonight I'd share champagne with my cancer-free mother, toast the 96 clients who'd chosen character over contracts, and sleep the deep sleep of someone who'd turned termination into transformation. 3 days, that's all it had taken to show Donald the difference between power and influence, between managing and leading, between a job and a calling. And every morning since, when I walked into Hartley Strategies and saw what we were building, I whispered the same truth that had carried me through. The best revenge isn't served cold. It's signed, sealed, and delivered with a smile. Victory isn't loud. It signs quietly, builds steadily, and succeeds completely. And sometimes, just sometimes, the person they fire on Tuesday becomes the competition they fear by Friday. 3 days, 96 clients, one woman who refused to let anyone else define her worth. That's not a revenge story, that's a resurrection. Thank you so much for listening to this story of corporate revenge and sweet vindication. I'm curious, where are you listening from? Drop a comment below and let me know what city or country you're tuning in from. I love connecting with listeners from around the world. If you enjoyed Elise's journey from termination to triumph, please subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts. Have you ever experienced workplace injustice? How did you handle it? Let's discuss in the comments below. Your stories inspire future content, so don't be shy. Share away.